2 hours later, Karen sat in her pristine living room, every throw pillow positioned at regulation angles, watching through her plantation shutters as hazmat-suited figures swarmed the Henderson property. The clicking of the radiation detector had evolved into a full electronic symphony, and she was beginning to suspect her community improvement project had taken an unexpected turn. Her phone buzzed incessantly. Text after text from fellow residents. "Karen, what did you do?" "Susan from Elm Street. My roses are wilting just looking at that pool." "Margaret from Oak Avenue. The news trucks are here." Anonymous. "Definitely Harold from the corner house." News trucks. Karen's perfectly applied mascara smudged as she peeked outside. Channel 7, Channel 12, and, oh God, Channel 3 with that awful investigative reporter who'd exposed the mayor's landscaping scandal. The doorbell rang with the aggressive persistence of someone who knew she was hiding. Karen smoothed her hair and opened the door to find Detective Sarah Chen, whose reputation for solving Maple Grove's impossible cases was legendary. "Mrs. Whitfield, I need to ask you some questions about the contents of that pool." "It's just household waste, Detective. Completely legal recycling initiative." Detective Chen consulted her notepad. "Household waste doesn't typically register radioactive signatures, ma'am." Karen's knees nearly buckled. "Radioactive? Where exactly did you source this? Recycled community waste?" The truth tumbled out like water from a broken dam. Karen had spent 3 weeks collecting evidence of HOA violations, rummaging through garbage cans under cover of darkness. But her final stop had been the mysterious corner house at 15 Sycamore, the one with the reclusive owner who never attended HOA meetings and whose lawn was perpetually perfect without any visible maintenance. "I may have borrowed some items from Dr. Reeves' disposal area," Karen admitted. Detective Chen's pen froze mid-sentence. "Dr. Marcus Reeves, the nuclear physicist." The color drained from Karen's face faster than her pool-draining revenge plot. Dr. Reeves, the quiet neighbor she'd dismissed as antisocial, was apparently the kind of scientist whose household waste required special disposal protocols. "Ma'am, I need you to tell me exactly what you took from Dr. Reed's property." Karen's memory raced through her midnight garbage raids. Old medical equipment, strange containers with warning labels she couldn't read in the dark, and what she'd assumed were oversized science fair projects. Her community-minded recycling project had inadvertently created Maple Grove's first environmental disaster. The front door burst open without ceremony. Derek Henderson stood there, still in his boxers, but now accompanied by a lawyer in an expensive suit. "Karen Whitfield," the lawyer announced, "you're being served with a cease and desist order, a property damage lawsuit, and, pending EPA findings, potential federal charges for environmental terrorism." "Environmental terrorism?" Karen squeaked. "I was maintaining community standards." Detective Chen closed her notepad. "Mrs. Whitfield, you're going to need to come with us for questioning, and you might want to call your own lawyer." As Karen was escorted to the police car, she caught sight of Dr. Reeves standing in his perfectly maintained yard, shaking his head with what looked suspiciously like amusement. Their eyes met across the street, and he offered a small knowing wave. For the first time in years, Karen Whitfield realized she might have finally met her match in the neighborhood hierarchy game. The last thing she saw before the police car door closed was Channel 3's aggressive investigative reporter shoving a microphone toward her face, shouting questions about nuclear contamination in suburban paradise. The Maple Grove Community Center had never hosted a more dramatic HOA meeting. Every seat was filled, with residents spilling into the aisles and crowding against the walls. Karen sat at the front table, not in her usual position of authority, but in the defendant's chair, flanked by her hastily hired attorney and a court-appointed environmental consultant. The past week had been a masterclass in public humiliation. Her mugshot had gone viral on Nextdoor. The local newspaper ran a front-page story titled "Howell President's Nuclear Meltdown." Worst of all, her own homeowners association had called an emergency vote of no confidence. Dr. Reeves sat in the front row, no longer the mysterious recluse, but revealed as the neighborhood's unlikely hero. His testimony to the EPA had prevented a full-scale evacuation, explaining that Karen's radioactive waste was actually depleted uranium from his obsolete smoke detectors and medical isotopes from his late-wife's cancer treatments. Dangerous if mishandled, but not the neighborhood-ending catastrophe everyone had feared. The good news, announced EPA Representative Julia Martinez, is that contamination levels are manageable. The bad news is that cleanup costs are estimated at $47,000. A collective gasp echoed through the community center. Karen's attorney whispered furiously in her ear, but she was barely listening. Her entire retirement savings wouldn't cover half that amount. Derek Henderson stood up, still nursing the satisfaction of viral fame. His boxer-clad confrontation with Karen had garnered 2 million views on TikTok. I want to know how someone this reckless was ever elected to lead our community. Actually, Dr. Reeves interrupted, rising with unexpected authority. I have a proposal. The room fell silent. Karen looked up, expecting the final blow to her already demolished reputation. Mrs. Whitfield's excessive enthusiasm for community oversight revealed a serious problem. We have a neighbor with specialized knowledge living among us, yet our HOA structure provided no mechanism for consulting experts on technical matters. He paused, letting his words sink in. I propose we restructure our board to include advisory positions for residents with relevant expertise. Karen's attorney nudged her. This wasn't the public execution she'd expected. Dr. Reeves continued, furthermore, I'll personally oversee the cleanup process and negotiate with the EPA for reduced penalties, provided Mrs. Whitfield agrees to certain conditions. What conditions? Karen asked, her voice barely audible. First, you resign as HOA president immediately. Second, you serve 1 year of community service, helping other neighborhoods avoid similar disasters. Third, Dr. Reeves smiled, and Karen caught a glimpse of the same amusement she'd seen during her arrest. You attend mandatory anger management classes. The room buzzed with murmurs. It was more merciful than anyone had expected, especially Karen. Why would you help me? She asked. Dr. Reeves adjusted his glasses. Because, Mrs. Whitfield, your attention to detail, when properly channeled, could actually benefit the community. You noticed violations everyone else missed. You organized complex operations single-handedly. You just need to learn the difference between leadership and tyranny. 3 months later, Karen stood in her front yard, wearing a court-ordered community service vest, helping her newest client navigate HOA regulations in the neighboring Oakwood subdivision. Her own pool, finally restored to its original Pacific teal glory, sparkled behind her. Dr. Reeves waved from his front porch, where he now served as the newly elected HOA president, bringing both scientific rigor and diplomatic sanity to community governance. Karen's phone buzzed with a text from Derek Henderson. Saw your interview on Channel 3. Reformed HOA tyrant helps others. Pretty good redemption arc. Pool party Saturday. She smiled, typing back, I'll bring the recycling guidelines. But as she looked across the street at Dr. Reeves' house, she couldn't shake the feeling that his late wife's medical waste disposal had been suspiciously convenient to discover, almost as if he'd been waiting for exactly the right kind of neighborhood busybody to stumble across it. The thought should have bothered her more than it did. Karen Whitfield stood in her designer Lululemon athleisure wear, clipboard clutched in her manicured fingers, staring at the most beautiful revenge she'd ever orchestrated. The Hendersons' pristine infinity pool, once the crown jewel of Maple Grove Estates, now resembled a post-apocalyptic dumpster. Soggy pizza boxes floated alongside deflated pool floaties, while a collection of expired yogurt containers bobbed near the shallow end like grotesque water lilies. Perfect, she whispered, adjusting her oversized sunglasses despite the overcast morning sky. The front door of 42 Magnolia Lane burst open, and Derek Henderson stumbled onto his manicured lawn in nothing but boxer shorts and unbridled fury. Karen, what the hell did you do to my POL? Karen straightened her spine, transforming from scheming neighbor into the self-appointed guardian of community standards. Derek Henderson, as HOA president, I issued you 17 written warnings about your pool's non-compliance with our aesthetic guidelines. Non-compliance. It's a PUOL. It holds weight here. Wrong shade of blue. Karen replied coolly, consulting her clipboard. Article 4.2 of our community guidelines clearly states that pool water must maintain a Caribbean aqua hue, not the Pacific teal you've been sporting. Derek's wife, Linda, appeared beside him in her bathrobe, her jaw dropping at the sight of her pool transformed into a floating landfill. You crazy woman. That's thousands of dollars in damage. Karen's perfectly veneered smile widened. Actually, it's classified as a community improvement project. The HOA voted last night. What vote? We weren't notified. Emergency session. Quorum of 3. Karen gestured toward her 2 elderly accomplices, Mrs. Peterson and Mr. Kowalski, who waved sheepishly from behind Karen's perfectly pruned hedges. Linda's face flushed crimson. You can't just fill our pool with garbage. Technically, it's recycled community waste, Karen corrected. Very eco-friendly. Though I must say, discovering that expired sushi in your own trash was quite revealing, Derek. Raw fish disposal violates Health Code 7.3. Derek took a menacing step forward. You went through our trash? How presidents have certain investigative privileges. Karen's voice carried the authority of someone who turned homeowners association leadership into a full-contact sport. The sound of sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Karen's confidence flickered for just a moment. She hadn't expected law enforcement quite this quickly. You called the cops on us? Derek demanded. Actually, Karen said, her voice suddenly uncertain. I think someone called them on me. 3 police cruisers rounded the corner, followed by a white van marked Environmental Protection Agency. Karen's clipboard slipped from her suddenly sweaty palms. Officer Martinez stepped out of the lead car, surveying the scene with practiced bewilderment. Ma'am, we received reports of illegal dumping and potential environmental contamination. Karen's mouth opened and closed like one of the goldfish she'd relocated from the Henderson's decorative pond. For the first time in her 5-year reign as HOA president, Karen Whitfield found herself speechless. The mystery deepened as the EPA agent approached with a hazmat detector, its clicking growing more frantic as he neared the pool.